Well, back here in the studio, hundreds of thousands of college students will graduate this year, hoping to find a job after receiving their diplomas. But the prospects are not looking good for the new members of the labor force, with 2.8 million unemployed and about 7 million underemployed people recorded last year. Now, some sectors say these are signs there is a looming youth employment crisis. For a discussion tonight, we're joined here in the studio by Ruth Georget, Joint Program Coordinator of United Nations Program on Youth Employment. Ruth, good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. Well, in that little bit, I talked about how people are talking about this situation as a looming crisis, as an impending problem. But the reality is the crisis is here. We're experiencing it right now. In fact, we've been experiencing it for a few more years already with the I don't know if you remember the IT. It began with the IT and then with the nursing wave. The question now is, with the current batch of our graduates, will there still be a way out for them?
That's a good question, Carmina. You know, at the International Labor Organization, we believe that there are jobs out there together with the Department of Labor and Employment. If you look at the major employment online searches, there are quite a number of jobs that are out there. I think the biggest question that we have is whether the qualifications of young graduates meet the standards of the industries and the demand. Also because young people often move from one job to the other. Oftentimes the first job that they get will not be the job that they will hold on to and build a career on. So it does take a while in terms of patience, but also what's more important is in terms of matching what young people have learned in school and those that are in demand from the industry.
Yeah, there seems to be a disconnect between the skill set and what's available out there. How do we bridge that gap?
Yeah, you know what? One of the things that we're trying to do under the Joint Program on Youth Employment and Migration, which is helps the country try to meet the MDGs and Millennium Development Goals, is to be able to strengthen the labor market information system of the country. You know how we should be able to project what would be the growing industries in the next 3 to 5 years so that we can prepare our graduates now for those jobs rather than generating all these fresh graduates not knowing exactly where they're going to end up or not really projecting whether industries that they've studied for are still going to be there in the next 3 to 5 years.
Right, because most often than not what happened, especially when the IT and the nursing wave came, it was during their first year of collegiate education when recruitment started to happen. So by the time they graduated, the wave was over. The bubble had burst.
Absolutely. In fact, when you speak of labor market information, that's why the information doesn't have to be stagnant. Information has to be moving.
It has to be vibrant.
Exactly. For us to be able to determine whether the courses that are being offered right now and today are the same demand in the next 3 to 5 years. And I think that's what needs to be strengthened in the country right now. We've been working very closely with the Department of Labor and Employment to be able to strengthen the PhilJobNet. You know, the President of the Philippines has mentioned the PhilJobNet as a mechanism by which you can match the demand, the supply, and as well as what the industries will be needing. And I think this is a good program that needs to be further enhanced.
Here's a question. Is this problem exclusive to the Philippines? Is there a case study out there when subsequently the gap was bridged and there was a match between the skill set and the available jobs?
I think the issue of job skills mismatch will always be an issue globally. I think also because of the changing environments. But what we need to do is to be able to, there's no one perfect solution, but what we need to be able to be prepared for the future, and that's where the challenge lies. Also, what's important is that for government agencies to work together, to be coordinated in their efforts. Every now we see that governments like the Philippines has identified youth employment as a priority. And there are lots of policies and programs, but the issue of coherence and synergy among these different agencies is something that needs to be enhanced, and that's where we, under the joint program, tries to work with. If I may just mention, with the support of the government of Spain, the joint program has been working through several interventions. The first is in terms of policy. We're working together with the Department of Labor and Employment and the National Youth Commission to develop what we call a national action plan for youth employment and migration.
So at least we have a roadmap of where we can bring them. I mean, the demand may change from year to year, but at least we have a roadmap already and sort of guideposts for the new graduates.
Absolutely,
right?
That's what we need, and this plan has to go down to the local government level as well, not just at the national level, because we realize that local economic development is an issue that has to be addressed at the LGU level.
Right. And they're key. As in any other problem in this country, LGUs really are the key to solving most of these problems.
Absolutely, and that's why we encourage local government units to really take seriously, for instance, strengthening of public employment service offices, look into how they can increase investments in their communities, because we believe that they still are they're not the job generators. Government, we believe, is not really the job generators, it's the private sector. But they need to be able to create an enabling environment so that there'll be more investment.
Here's another problem that compounds this whole situation. Oftentimes we look beyond our borders as to what the demands are, but what you're basically saying is we can create the demand within the country and not necessarily look beyond our shores, correct?
Yes, that's what we're trying to promote. But admittedly, the reality is that because of economics, people would choose careers that would look towards beyond the country, and that's a phenomenon which we need to also face head on. But what we want to communicate is that if you do choose, it's choice.
Right.
And if you do choose to go abroad and work abroad, you need to know what your rights are, whether where you're going is safe. You need to know the culture that where you're going to, and these are parts of preparedness and safe migration. If young people want to choose, oftentimes it's young people that are more vulnerable to illegal trafficking, to illegal recruitment, and so on and so forth. And that's because of the preparedness. In fact, the International Organization for Migration, which is a partner also in this joint program, says that they don't recommend young graduates to go abroad immediately, because you would want them to be able to establish themselves in terms of skills, not just hard skills, but also soft skills, to be able to work abroad, because the environment is just totally different.
You barely know yourself, and yet here you are getting to know another culture and another country.
Absolutely.
Okay, but we're going to talk about vulnerable employment later on, because I do want to focus on that. I think that's a greater problem here. But I want you to talk to us about the youth population growth momentum and how it adds to the problem.
Right. In the Philippines, the youth sector is 30% of the estimated 94 million. That's roughly 80 million young people. And that is, if you look at the demographics of the Philippines, in the next coming years, you have a very young group who will be entering the labor force. And until we're able to really find an avenue by which they can enter the industries, then this issue of increasing population and increasing number entering the labor force will continuously be an issue.
Because when you look at the brighter side of it, it can be a positive.
Of course.
It is a positive, but then again, as you said, there is a mismatch there. There is that disconnect. Now talk to us about economic growth and how it is helping or not helping the current situation that we're in.
Right. We always talk about growth that should be creating jobs. A lot of people have spoken about how growth at this point has not really contributed largely to generating jobs, but I think that's where the government and the private sector are working towards creating sustainable growth and growth that is not jobless. And that's where we should be focusing on, because until we are able to create jobs, then growth in terms of even if you say the 7 and 8% growth will not translate into jobs. And I think that's something that we have to be constantly working on. Of course, it's changed in terms of what types of industries there are in the Philippines.
For sure.
You look at other countries and there have been consistently strong in terms of manufacturing, and even in agriculture. For the Philippines, we say that agriculture is still one of the key industries. And we need to be able to ensure that there will be young people who will continuously strengthen the agricultural sector. Maybe not in the old ways, but in new ways by which we can be able to compete globally. And that's something that we need to be looking at.
In fact, when you talk to a lot of experts, they're saying that agriculture, the agricultural side of the Philippines is the key to this country's wealth in the future. That if you see a farmer that's rich enough and can feed his family and can sustain it, then the rest of the population will be okay.
Right. We need to be able to look at that. Of course, there's no doubt that young people are looking towards going to the cities and looking for jobs that are easier to find in terms of employment. But the issue of vulnerable employment is something that I want to discuss with you, because we say that there are jobs, but the question is, are they decent? And I think that's the large issue there. We speak about vulnerable employment because the issue is young people may have a job in terms of the definition, but at the end of the day, are they jobs decent? Maybe it's the job that they have is not productive. Income is inadequate.
Are their rights being trampled upon?
Are their rights, exactly. Do they have the social dialogue? Are they being allowed to negotiate with management? Things like these. These are rights that young people sometimes, even when they enter the labor force, are not aware of. And that's one of the things that we're also trying to advocate. Because labor rights education.
Really, when you think about it, a person's youth can be an asset and a liability as well, because when you're young, you really don't know what you're getting into yet, right? So more often than not, they fall prey to such situations.
But that's why I think it's important for young people not to be naive in thinking that the first job they get will be the job that they will hold on to for the next 10, 20 years. I think studies have shown that the transition from school to work is actually anywhere between 2 to 3 years. That the job that you enter when you graduate from university is possibly that job you'll end up with in the next 10 years, because you'll keep on changing, and that's fine, because you learn to grow. You learn what we call life skills. You learn work ethics, and that's something that you take on and bring when you move on and look for a better career, a better job.
And also the fact that most of our graduates are ill-equipped. That's also the reason, one of the main reasons why they find themselves in a situation where they're part of a vulnerable employment situation.
Right. In fact, if I may just say, we would like to really work. We have been working with the Philippine government to do several things, as I mentioned. One is in terms of strengthening public employment services, coordination with governments. The migration issue is a big issue for us as well, because like you said, many young Filipinos take courses because their objective really is to go abroad without really thinking what the implications are. And we really can't blame them, but we need to be able to look at whether the choice that they make is a choice rather than out of necessity. And if I may also say that technical vocational training and entrepreneurship training are options.
Of course.
It's not just wage employment. We need to be able to build entrepreneurs amongst our young people. And this is an opportunity for the country to also prosper. You know, I'm sure you know that 95%, maybe even 98% of the country are composed of small and medium enterprises, right? So if we build on this is a potential, as you've said. It's a wealth that we need to be able to manage, to be able to nurture.
So to all the graduates out there is a silver lining. Do not lose hope. Be proactive as well and know your rights. What other advice can you tell them?
Well, one is that for young graduates to be, as you've said, know what their rights are. It's important for young people but also responsibilities, by the way. We speak of rights, but at the same time, responsibilities have to be addressed. For instance, do you go to work on time? Do you follow corporate policies? These are simple things that sometimes young people miss out. And I think it's very important that life skills is part of young people's training. Career coaching, guidance counseling, take advantage of that, because that will help you potentially get your career, the job, when you finish school.
All right. We'd like to thank you for joining us. Ruth Georget, Country Coordinator of the UN Joint Program on Youth Employment. Thank you so much for taking time out to talk to us tonight.
Thank you to Carmina.
Okay, we're going to take...